live on the air. I'm Richard Saile.
This is wild.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Lounge Time. I'm your host, Rich Saile, and on today's episode of 2026 Offseason Grades, we're going to be going over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had some key veteran losses. One retired, another one they lost in free agency, another defensive starter left in free agency. But their draft was actually really nice, including a player who has been cooking so far in training camp, making some noise, which we are going to get into the Tampa Bay Bucs offseason. Let's kick it off here. What did the Buccaneers do? Well, the biggest loss was Mike Evans, who had been there since 2014, left for the 49ers. Bucs wanted to get younger. Lavonte David, their middle linebacker for years, 2012 I want to say. He retired this offseason, and they lost some other guys like Jamel Dean, one of their stud corners to the Steelers. But they had a decent way of addition by subtraction. And what I mean by that is Alex Anzalone from Detroit, he's a solid linebacker. He's no Lavonte David, but he's solid. Okay. They get Al-Quadin Muhammad, who had a 10-sack season up in Detroit. And you always want to have some pass rushers, and they need that badly on this team. And he's someone that's produced for Detroit pretty good, and he's going to help to that front. Kenneth Gainwell to their running back room from the Steelers. They needed some running game help. Although I'm happy Sean Tucker did really well for the one time in fantasy, but he cannot be a starting running back option for the Bucs. So Kenneth Gainwell, he's a good rotational back for someone that's a bell cow. And they lost Rachaad White, which was big for them because he was kind of their guy that had the lion's share of carries. So Kenneth Gainwell in their draft, which I really like, Ruben Bain Jr. And I know I talked about it on the draft episode in the mock draft episode where he had gotten into trouble. I said he was going to slide in the draft. Thought the Cowboys would take him at 20. That's where my mock draft had him. But Tampa got him. And that's a really good get because he's been tearing it up in camp. You watch the joint practices with the Jets? Saw that home move he had on the Chiefs last preseason game, right? Oh my God. He might be my favorite right now to win Defensive Rookie of the Year right now. I know I'm not overreacting. I think he's going to have a really good year under Todd Bowles' defense. And if he just cooks like he did in Miami, woo, watch out. Watch out. He might have a really good rookie year. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit. Coaching news on the Bucs side of things. So Josh Grizzard fired as their OC. And they brought in Zac Robinson, who I roasted last year on the show because I had Bijan Robinson in fantasy. He was the Falcons offensive coordinator the last couple years. I do not love this move at all. I despise this move, okay? I can't tell you how bad I hate this move. Like, pistol runs, it was so predictable. They were never creative on offense. And now you've got Baker Mayfield with a really young receiving core. And you don't even have not a great running game. And this is the guy you choose? Disagree with this hire big time. I do not like this hire at all. Let me go back to the draft for a moment because I forgot a couple of other guys that I liked in the draft. Josiah Trotter, who is a good linebacker, and I'm curious to see how he fits himself in Todd Bowles' defense. And that's going to be a position that they really buffed up. So while they couldn't fill that position by one player, but they got depth at linebacker with Anzalone and now Trotter, which is good, and then Keontae Scott, who had a really good playoff with the Miami Hurricanes as well. So the Tampa Bay Bucs going after Miami Hurricane players. Keontae Scott was a very good corner for the Hurricanes, especially in the CFP run last year for them as well. So some other really interesting pickups. Ted Hurst from Georgia State in the 3rd round. That's good for depth. I don't know if he's going to get significant minutes right away, and then I don't know the rest of these guys much for the Bucs that they drafted. Let's get into some of the... Trying to see if there's any signings that I might have missed. I know that Jake Browning and Ashton Daniels, the guy from Kansas, they're battling out for the backup spot. And the rookie from Kansas might win the backup job. I was hearing that this morning, and that's something that I didn't expect to hear because Jake Browning was a solid backup with the Bengals, but it's Jalen Daniels. My apologies. Jalen Daniels. Jalen Daniels might win the backup job, which he provides some explosiveness to the backup quarterback role because he can move, and he's going to be good a lot. I do love the Eric Rivers pickup as an undrafted free agent. I really think that's going to be a nice signing for the Bucs, and they have a lot of young receivers that I think can have really good moments. And wow, I just am seeing that now because I remember Eric Rivers from the College Football 26 video game, and he was a really good card and cut for those that remember. But I really like this young receiving core for the Bucs down the road. Like, this is a good young receiving group if they can stay healthy. Because I'm going to, you know what, let's get into it right now. Because Chris Godwin, he's hurt, and he's never really gained that form of being a number one wideout since the injury that he had 2 years ago almost, and he just hasn't been able to regroup that and get back to the production level. Hopefully, he can get his way back on the field soon. Ibuka fell off after the first half of 2025 when teams figured out, okay, he's the guy we might have to start double teaming. But then they have a lot of other young guys that have had moments. But now with Evans gone, are they ready to step up into big time roles? Well, let's get into this depth chart for the Bucs because I have questions, okay, with some of the issues on this team. Number one question I have is, if Chris Godwin's hurt and teams start double teaming Ibuka, who's the number 3 that can be productive? Because there's a lot of guys on this roster that I like at the receiver room. Like, I think this is a really strong receiver room with young but upside. But it's also not really it's questionable. But not as questionable as the run game and the offensive line, which I'm going to say for a little bit. But this receiver room is Ibuka, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, who 2 years ago, he had a really good second half of 2024. And then really didn't quite capture that last season. Then you have Ted Hurst, Tez Johnson, who was with Bo Nix in Oregon. He could fly now. All right? And then you have Cameron Johnson, David Sills the fifth. My guy Eric Rivers is all the way on the fourth depth chart, fourth string receiver. I like a lot of these young receivers if they can find their way into playing meaningful snaps and improve and develop really well. And I look at guys like Jalen McMillan, Tez Johnson, Ted Hurst, guys that could be really good players if they can find their way to create separation, if they can find their way in the offense to be sneaky candidates to be really productive players in this offense, because they've got some playmakers. They're not the great playmakers like Evans and Godwin were for the past almost decade, but they can produce. And again, it's going to come down to who emerges now as that number 3, maybe number 2 if Godwin does get injured, okay? And if Ibuka gets double teamed, that's going to be interesting. Now, I know Godwin is healthy right now according to ESPN's depth chart. I'm just saying because there's going to be moments where Godwin may be dinged up, coverage is dictated from Ibuka. Well, then who's the 3 willing to step up? And they have some candidates that can do that. And I would say right now, Jalen McMillan or Tez Johnson could be that guy. Maybe Ted Hurst is that dude. We're going to find out as one of the big questions. I don't love the depth at tight end outside of Cade Otton. I don't love it. I mean, Otton is a solid player, but I don't love the depth behind Otton. And that's not really something that I feel comfortable with. I think they should have got somebody that would be able to help that a little bit. Right, but they had to sign Otton. I think it was this free agency or the one before, because they desperately needed a tight end. Offensive line-wise, outside of Tristan Wirfs, this offensive line has me a little worried. Like, Luke Gedeke, he's been guard before. Now he's right tackle, which I'm going, I don't know. And then the left guard, center, and right guard, I don't think they have an answer there. That really worries me. And if they can't run the ball from the interior of the offensive line, which has been a problem for years, then that's going to be a problem for, like, pocket disruption. And Atlanta's got a couple guys. New Orleans, not as much. Carolina's got a good defensive tackle duo that can get after the quarterback. So I look at these guys and say they're in trouble if they can't hold up front. Meaning they can't dictate the running game and they can't pass protect in the B and C gaps, which that's a problem for me. So I look at interior offensive line, big question mark, lack of tight end depth, and I'm looking, who's that guy that's going to emerge as wide receiver 3? Now, the running back room, Bucky Irving's the 1, Gainwell's the 2, like we said. Sean Tucker's the 3, who I liked. He won me a fantasy week, so he's on my good side because he won me a week in fantasy last year, which was a bad year for me. I am bouncing back this year. This is not about that, though. But I do like the 3 backs. How they will be able to split the carries is interesting. I think Irving's going to get somewhere between 15 and 20 carries if they are going to run. But I could see 15 being that magic number of carries. And then Gainwell in passing situations. Tucker maybe mixed in a little bit. But I do like some of these young guys on their offense. It's just going to be who takes a step forward and the depth and the lack of help on the interior of this offensive line. That's where I'm a little worried about. But I think this offense can be solid. Definitely average, maybe slightly above average. I could see that. Let's go to their defense, which I like some of these young pieces. I do. Elijah Roberts, Vita Vea, Zac Robinson, guys that are good against the run. And speaking of Vita Vea, they gave him an extension last week, which he was the subject of trade rumors involving the Bears, the Bills. I don't think New England was ever serious in on Vita Vea. The Niners were the other team. So the Bears, Bills, and Niners were all trying to look and see, is Vita Vea open? We'll take him. Nope. Bucs give him the extension. So Elijah Roberts, Vea, and Zac Robinson, really good run defending defensive linemen. And Kalijah Kancey's good for depth. Nunez Roches is a good interior disruptor. So they have some guys at depth. I will say, though, they're starting 3 down linemen really good against the run, so Todd Bowles has always been a great run defensive team. They're pass rushers. Bain could have a really strong rookie year, and he would probably be my pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year at this moment. Yaya Diaby, he's a good opposite guy. He's not going to wow you with anything. Roseboom and Anzalone with Josiah Trotter mixing in an inside linebacker, it's good inside linebacker depth. It's not great. I'm shocked Al-Quinn Muhammad is not starting over Diaby, but maybe Todd Bowles, we'll see how that position plays out. There's one more preseason game to see. Maybe they've already had that answer solved opposite of Ruben Bain Jr. So the Bucs have some pass rushers that can rotate, not as deep as they would like, but they have a combination of edge and interior disruption, which is good. Inside linebacker, I think you're going to see a good mix between Anzalone, Roseboom, and Trotter mix in on certain downs. But Todd Bowles is a good front seven, not a great one, but there's a lot to like with the 3 down guys defending the run, and then Bain, he's going to be their main pass rusher with Anzalone manning up the middle mostly, and then the opposite pass rushing side, whether it is Muhammad or Diaby. Can one of them have 6 to 9 sacks? Muhammad's had 10, but can Diaby make that jump in his game? We're going to see. Secondary is actually above average. Because Zaire McCollum, he's solid. Antoine Winfield Jr., we know he's a stud at free safety. Benjamin Morrison, I liked at Notre Dame, a long corner. I don't know if he's ready to prove that he can make a jump up. And then Jacob Parrish, Tyke Smith, Miles Killebrew, Keontae Scott. These guys are good. We're going to see how this secondary does. I think there's some questions about, can they hold up in coverage? And can they not give up big plays? We'll see how that goes. That would be my one area of concern with the defense, is the secondary giving up big plays. And it happened a good amount last season toward the second half of the year. And that's where I worry with this team. Are they in trouble with giving up big plays? And is that secondary good enough? Because Morrison, he's a tall corner. He should be able to handle bigger receivers. Winfield Jr. is really good as an in-the-box safety. He can play pretty good in coverage. Zaire McCollum, is he ready to be a starting corner in this league? I think he is. I think he could prove that. So, again, this Bucs team, really good up front. That's how Todd Bowles likes to build the defense. And then the back end, they like to take chances when they blitz, but can they not get beat on big plays? That's my question with this secondary group. Let me go to a question I'm seeing a lot this offseason. Is Todd Bowles on the hot seat? Because I know a lot of people say the Bucs have gotten worse since he's been the head coach. And I think we need to remember this in perspective a little bit. I know it's been the weakest division in football for the last 3-4 years now. He has won 3 division titles from 22, 3, and 24. Okay? Albeit I know it's the weakest division in football right now. Last year, they were right there. The collapse definitely falls on him for how last year ended, without question. The only way I think Todd Bowles gets fired is if they have a huge fall off where they're like a 5-12. I would even say 6-11. They might get rid of him. I don't know if they would do it at 7-10 because, again, they were right there last year. They did collapse. Maybe 7-10 he goes, but I don't know. I don't know if I could see it. I know why they want him gone. Let me put it this way. The roster hasn't helped because there's been times where you're like, oh, Tampa's good. He should be having 10-win seasons with this team, and he isn't. But you look, and it feels like, to me, there is something missing with Todd Bowles, that he's not great at managing games at times. And I could see the frustration going on. And I look at that playoff game against Washington 2 years ago where the Commanders came back and won that game. And that was a home playoff game for Tampa. And Jaden Daniels and company won on the road. And again, they've had a bunch of different offensive coordinators the last couple of years. And whether it's because it doesn't work out or head coaching jobs, right? It just seems to be like this team doesn't have the success they should have in a weak division. And I think for them, they have to at least win the division for him to save his job. I would say if he wins a playoff game, he's safe. If they go 5-12, 6-11, I could see him being done. Maybe 7-10, depending on how the season ends. We haven't even gotten to the schedule yet. We're getting close. But this team, it can win the division without question. Do I think they're going to? They have a good shot. They do. But I would say the only way he's fired is if it's like a 5-12, 6-11 season where they are not great. But there are holes on this team that have some concerns for me as far as can they make that jump to win atop the NFC South. We're going to see. Let's go to their schedule. They open up at Cincinnati, where that's going to be a good game to watch. I think they're going to lose at Cincinnati. I don't think they are. I think Burrow's going to have answers for Todd Bowles' blitzing defense. Then again, they could win that game in Cincy. It wouldn't surprise me. That's a coin flip game. I'm going to say they lose at Cincy game 1. Home for the Bucs. Oh my God. Home for the Browns, I meant to say. Home for the Vikings. And home versus the Packers. So 3 straight home games. 4 of the next 5 are home. Really, 6 out of the next 7 are... No. 5 of the next 7 are home. I wanted to make sure my math was right. I have them winning against Cleveland and Minnesota. I really believe those teams are not very good. And I think that they're good enough to beat those teams. Green Bay's a coin flip because I do like the Bucs a little bit. But I'm gonna give Green Bay the edge because I like Green Bay a little bit more on the offensive side of things, and that Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs will have answers for Todd Bowles. So I'm going to say they're going to be 2-2, going to Dallas on a Thursday night, which is where they're going to lose. Home for the Steelers. They'll beat the Steelers because Todd Bowles, for some weird reason, has Aaron Rodgers' number over the years. 3-3. At Carolina, I believe they'll split, so they're going to lose the first meeting in Carolina. Home for Atlanta, win. At Chicago, that's a loss. So we're looking at 4-5 going into the bye week. Not bad. At Detroit, loss. I got 4-6. Even though they won in Detroit. Was it last year? No, Detroit won. But they lost at Detroit last year. They're going to lose again, 4-6. Home for Carolina on Monday night. That's a win, 5-6. The Chargers at home. No. 5-7. At Baltimore, loss. That's 5-8. New Orleans, that's a win. They're home for them. At Atlanta, I'm going to give them the win. So we're looking at now 7-8 with 2 games to go, and one of them is against the Rams, so that's a loss. At New Orleans to end the year. So this is my game where Todd Bowles might get fired. I think they lose at New Orleans. So I have the Bucs slotted at 7-10. Now, the second half of their schedule, no, I wouldn't even say that. They're from week 5 on, really 9 through 18 is where it's a little tough. There are games in the middle, like at Dallas, at Carolina, at Chicago. They could lose, like at Chicago and at Dallas, I think they'll lose. But again, some of those teams that could win, I don't think they'll win at Chicago, but some of those teams are coin flip games where if they win, they have a better shot at winning the South. But I have the Bucs at 7-10. I don't believe that they're going to win some of those games against some of those teams that they're going to be vying for the division with. But I don't even think they're a wild card contender in my eyes. I think they're good on paper, but they have just too many concerns for me, which I would be a little concerned with, and I've highlighted them earlier. I just don't think that their schedule works out where they could beat some of those teams. Like, they have the Chargers, they have the Ravens. That's tough. The Rams late in the year at home, which helps them, but I don't know if that's a great thing or not. At Detroit, which will be better. It's going to come down to the coin flip games. If they can win those, that would help them a lot. Which leads me to my offseason grade for the Bucs. I land at a B-. I like them improving the defense. I like some of the young guys they have at wide receiver. The Gainwell signing is huge for a backup running back. But I have a lot of questions on certain groups in the offense. The secondary worries me a little bit with them. And I think them losing Jamel Dean's going to hurt this year defensively, because he had that one corner that could help a little bit, even though he wasn't crazy elite, but he was good enough that he could help take away some of the secondary from giving up the big plays. I don't know if they have that guy other than Winfield, who is more of an in-the-box safety, but he can cover a little bit. I don't know if they have another guy outside of Winfield Jr. in that secondary that I feel like is ready to make that jump yet. So I'm going to land at a B- for the Bucs right now. So that is today's episode of 2026 Offseason Grades. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so that way you guys can get all the latest content. We are nearing the NFL season for 2026. You don't want to miss out on the preseason episode where I give my playoff teams and Super Bowl 61 matchup and winner. You can also follow me at LoungeTime Pod on X. Yes, I've been tweeting recently. I watched the Patriots preseason game against the Eagles. I had my thoughts. I posted on X, along with some other news like the Browns naming Deshaun Watson the starter, along with some other news. If you have a question for the show, tweet at LoungeTime Pod, and I will answer it on the show. Just don't be a bad question, I'm hoping. So that is it for today's episode of 2026 Offseason Grades. I will see you guys in the final episode of 2026 Offseason Grades, and then we'll be back for some more NFL content.